Today I'm going to be talking to you about Team Topologies. Before we get into that, can I just see a quick show of hands who has heard of Team Topologies? Hands up. Heard of it? Okay. Keep your hands up if you've read the book. Or actually, keep your hands up if you've read half the book. Okay. So most people have read half the book. And when we talk about Team Topologies, most people think big organizations, right? So you need lots and lots of people to reorganize your teams and everything. So this talk's scaling it back down and thinking, actually, how can we use Team Topologies in smaller businesses potentially? So before I move forward, so a little bit about me. My name is Rich Allen. I'm head of consulting at Conjurer Solutions. It's a boutique consultancy in Bournemouth, just down the coast. And I'm what's known as a Team Topologies valued practitioner. What does that mean? It means about 3 years ago, I read the book and did some work with Pure Gym at the time. So we implemented what we thought was Team Topologies after reading the book. I then reached out to Matthew and Manuel, and we wrote a case study. And then I said, I want to learn some more. And they said, cool, come on board. Can you do these infographics for us? Sure. And then basically I've been working with them ever since on workshops and helping to spread the good word of Team Topologies. So for those that haven't seen the book, this is the book. Recommend you go and buy it and read it. And it came out in 2019. So it's now 3 years old, which is crazy. And today, we're going to be talking about a company's, or the way that we use Team Topologies to help a smaller company scale. Now, Jana was talking about an agency moving into product. This company is a prime example of that. They started in 2008 as an agency and transitioned into product. Did anyone get the bus today? Get the bus? What's the bus? Did you buy a ticket with your mobile phone? Cool. Okay, so mobile ticketing. So either way, if you buy a ticket with your mobile phone, Passenger is probably the app that you've used, specifically in Brighton and Hove, but they are around the rest of the country as well. So there they provide sustainable transport ticketing solutions, and we'll go a bit more into those in the talk. So what were the outcomes that we got from applying Team Topologies at Passenger? Well, they generally felt that they got better alignment of their marketing, their customers, and their product. They had a clearer kind of focused hiring strategy, reduced cognitive load, we'll touch on that a little bit later, clearer ownership for their development teams, and a clearer understanding of their purpose. And we'll go through sort of how we achieve some of that. So we'll touch on what were the triggers for change, why did they search for Team Topologies. We'll go through some of the key concepts, what we did to apply them, and some of the lessons learned. I hope to do that in the time available. Apologies if it doesn't quite work. I may be another Nigel. So triggers for change. In 2008, they were an agency. But in 2015, they were incorporated as Passenger. Launched a SaaS product that provided mobile ticketing solutions, and everything was going fine and dandy. They were growing slowly but steadily. And then 2020 pandemic hit. Nobody used public transport. Ooh, that's a bit of a sticker. But the flip side of it was there's a rise in contactless payments. Nobody wants to touch anything, which is great for them, not for everybody else necessarily. But they managed to then sign a deal with Go Ahead, who's one of the five PLCs in the UK that do mobile transport. And so they got injection of cash. We need to grow. We need to scale up. So when we started having a conversation, we said, what does your team structure look like? And most people will probably recognize, well, we've got an org chart. And our org chart is lots of C-suite people with some managers and engineering. A big blob of engineering, and the team at the time was only about 10 people. And we've got some avatars in there, which you'll see a bit later on in the talk. They got to a place where they were growing organically. So they were doing daily stand-ups. But basically, everyone was in the stand-up. Absolutely everyone. We had customer services, we had operations, engineering, you name it, they were there. And so what was kind of happening was from 2015 through to 2021, there was an explosion in communication channels. So everyone was talking to everybody. Everybody knew a different part, or most of the product. Everyone was collaborating together constantly. And it was a daily bundle of fun, shall we call it. And when I spoke to the CTO, Dave Holbert, at the time, I said, can you describe to me like how your company is currently organized? And he drew this for me. And he said, this is what it feels like when I think about my organization. There's some open data stuff, and there's some commerce bits, and there's verification, and we've got some premium, and we've got my trip, and then there's a big bundle of mess in the middle, the big ball of mud. Cool, that's a good place to start. So they knew where they wanted to go, but they weren't quite sure how to get there. And at the time, Tom Quay, who's a good friend of mine, had heard me ranting and raving about Team Topologies and the stuff I'd done at Pure Gym. And he was like, well, could we use that to help us think about how we might grow? Can we preempt what other companies potentially go through naturally and preempt the pain that might be coming our way? I don't know. Let's give it a go. So that's what we did. I'm going to go through some of the Team Topologies concepts. There's quite a bit to take in if you haven't read the book, and I apologize for that. I'm going to skip over it quite quickly so we can get into some of the details of what we actually did. So apologies if some of it just goes over your head, but that's fine. And I'm also skipping some concepts as well, so it's not going to be a full detailed discussion of it. So what is Team Topologies' kind of core focus? Well, it's about fast flow of change. How can we get the fastest speed of value from our ideas that we come up with into our customers' hands? And how can we continually do that whilst our environment, our markets, our technologies are evolving? We need to be able to sustain a continued flow of change. And one of the biggest blockers to change is handovers. So if we've got a development team and a test team and an operations team, and we are handing over between those teams, that's going to block flow. The idea comes into one team, they do some work, they throw it over to the next team, they do some work, the other team picks up some more work and throw that over, and then it keeps being managed. So handovers, that's not a good thing. We also, Team Topologies introduces a language for organizational design. And it's unique in its way of constraining you to think about your organization in 4 team types. So you don't just have a component team, some feature teams, a database team, all those kind of things. There's one of these 4 types. You should be able to look at your organization and say, these types of team are streamlined teams, these ones are platform teams, etc. And a streamlined team, you would have most of these in your organization. They're responsible for the delivery of value from end to end, idea through to an end customer. And then the other types of team are purely there to support the streamlined team. Okay? So they are there to make sure the streamlined team can deliver value as quickly as it can. And the way that those teams interact. Now, for those that have read the first half of the book, you may have missed these bits. And the way that teams interact is probably more important than naming of the teams. A lot of what people do, I read the first part of the book, go through my organization and say, right, that's a streamlined team, that's a platform team, that's an enabling team. Well, we've got 20 complex systems or complicated systems, so they must be all complicated. And then forget about, well, how do they interact? What's the interaction between the teams? So I recommend read the second part of the book, and or just listen to what I'm about to tell you. So there are 3 interaction modes. There's collaboration, where 2 teams work closely together. There's X as a service, where one team provides something as a service and the other team consumes it. And there's facilitation. And that's where one team helps another team to kind of upskill or introduce a new capability. And what we do is we use something called team interaction modeling to kind of draw out how our organization or how our teams interact. So here we can see we've got a stream-aligned team A who's delivering value end-to-end. They're collaborating at this point with team C, our complicated subsystem team. So they may be working on an API or something. We've got team D doing some facilitation over here. They may be introducing automation testing or something. And then team B, our platform team, is providing some services. Could be continuous delivery, any kind of services like that. And we'll see a bit more of that in context shortly. The other important thing is dependencies. You're going to have dependencies amongst your teams. There is no avoiding it. Every team relies on some other team or some other product or whatever. There are dependencies. But the key thing is how we track and monitor those dependencies. What we don't want is blocking dependencies. And a blocking dependency is the handover. So I can do some work, and I hand it over to this team, and then they do some work, but I'm blocked. I can't move forward on that thing until I get the thing back. So we don't want blocking things. We've also got slowing dependencies, which are a little bit better, but they just slow us down. Like we've got to wait for that other team still to get things done. And then healthy, okay dependencies. We want to strive for healthy and okay dependencies. Cognitive load. Now, you're all probably experiencing cognitive load right now because you're having to take on board everything I'm telling you. And you may also find that, well, it's not too bad on here, but there's quite a bright orange picture behind that. And that could be introducing extraneous cognitive load because you're focusing on the image rather than the text. But we need to think about the cognitive load that our teams are under because that gives us an indication that maybe our teams are overworked or they're not as productive, or maybe there's some awkward interactions between teams. And then the final concept that we're going to touch on today is Conway's Law. And show of hands, who's heard of Conway's Law? Okay, cool. Who's heard of the reverse Conway maneuver? Okay, cool. So we're going to sort of show you what that kind of might look like. And so Conway's Law is that typically an organization will produce products based on their communication structures. So if you've got a database team and you've got a front-end team, it's likely you would end up with a monolith database and a monolith front-end. So when applying that to Passenger, can we make use of that mirroring effect? And instead of relying organically on our team evolving based on just hiring people, can we think about how we should structure our business and therefore our teams to help us grow? Okay. So what do we do to apply the principles? Everyone's heard of monolith? Monolith. So a monolith is also a boulder, a rock, and stonemasons They've got this uncanny ability to find a crack in a rock, take a little chisel and dink, and the rock just falls apart. And if you know what you're looking for, it just splits, right? So this is what we refer to as fracture planes. And if you look at your organization, you look at your teams, your structure, your monoliths, there will be fracture planes where you can go, "Ooh, there's actually not much of a dependency there. Maybe we could split it." And that could be a business domain area, it could be technology, it could be user personas, it could be all sorts. And what we're going to go through today is focusing on user needs. So looking at user needs as a way to find potential boundaries that we could split our teams on. So we're going to use a technique called user needs mapping. You can go to that URL to find out a little bit more about the process. Quick show of hands, who's heard of Wardley mapping? Wardley mapping, excellent. Who actually does Wardley mapping all the way through to the evolution part? Okay, right. So there's quite a bit of a process, right, to get to, or it feels like there's a process to get to value in Wardley mapping. But when we were looking for potential boundaries, we found that there's value to be had in just the first stage of Wardley mapping. And so the first stage of Wardley mapping is thinking about who are your users. So if we're thinking about bus operators or passenger, we've got our passenger themselves, the people that are using the bus. We've got the operator, and they've got different teams. So they've got the operations team, we've got the commercial team, the marketing team. We're having to serve different needs with our product. Different users. So now we think about, okay, what needs are we serving for each of those users? Well, a bus passenger needs to buy a ticket. He needs to be able to use his ticket. He needs to be able to plan his journey. There's a couple of needs that person needs to get done. But also the operations team needs to publish any disruptions. Oh, that bus route's down, so I need to publish that. And that then needs to get into the app. So the app can tell the person the bus isn't there. Commercial teams need to be able to sell tickets. So there are lots of different customers or users and needs that we're serving. So then what we do is say, well, what capabilities do we have to meet those needs? So we plot those out and we draw lines between it all. And so it's difficult to see on this one, but so we've got live buses in order to plan a journey. We've got journey planning itself, mobile ticket use, and lots of different services that passenger build to meet those needs. And refer back to the big ball of mud we spoke about earlier. So this is the dependency chain that Dave Holbert, CTO, was looking at. It's like, I just can't see the wood for the trees. However, if we just have a little bit of a move about, these are exactly the same tickets, just reorganized to be maybe closely more related to. The commercial team is interested in selling tickets, buying tickets, using tickets, and then the passenger wants to do planning journeys, and then we've got the operations team. So actually, we can start to see potential fracture planes by the dependencies between the teams. So then if we think about our streamlined teams, well, what if we had a tickets and payments team, a journey planning team, a timetables disruptions team, and a platform team that provides services to those streamlined teams? Brilliant, they said. That sounds great. We could put those domains into those teams, and that's awesome. But Team Topologies says a team should be a structured, long-lived team of between 5 and 8 people. We've only got 10. So we need 5 to 6 teams, CFO. Oh, my word. That's going to cost us. Right, so it doesn't make sense for us to go down to that level. But what we can do, potentially, is just take a little step back, maybe just group those a little bit, just for now. Right? So that's our long game. Long game is we could have these teams. For now, let's say we've got two streams of value. We've got our commerce stream, who can generally deliver independently of our cities team. Although there is a dependency, you just notice here that we've got a bit of a platform that's currently owned by the cities team. That's not a recommended practice in Team Topologies. However, needs must, and we've only got 10 people. So it's one of the impacts of just having a smaller team. Right? The reality is those things exist, but we have to take that on board. So then we did a bit of a cognitive load assessment. And this was fairly simple. We said, right, let's look at all of the domains that we've got. We've got data sets, we've got buses in real time, we've got disruptions. Relatively to each other, how complex are they? And we just use a brain here to indicate, well, cities have probably got more cognitive load because they're dealing with complex domains or complicated domains. And again, Team Topology says no single team should have more than one complicated domain wherever possible. And a complex domain, absolutely no other domains. Complicated, you might also have some simple ones. But we've got 8 people. So again, in an ideal world, if we had enough people, we would split those out, because what this means is the people in those teams are having to context switch to get their head into live buses in real time, to get their head into data sets. But that's the reality of where they are. So if we then look at a candidate potential team structure using team interaction modeling, we can lay it out like this. So essentially we have 2 streams of value, commerce and cities. Now cities has got a platform around it. And the reason for that is it's not recommended for a team to be both a platform and a stream-aligned team. Because what you've got there is actually you're serving 2 customers. You're serving your commerce team and you're serving your end customer, which means you're context switching. You're one minute you're doing services, 1 minute you're doing end user stuff. So it's not good, but it's the reality of where we are. In an ideal world, we would split those out. We also said, okay, well, we've got an architect and we've got a product manager. Let's put them in an enabling team, and they would facilitate product management skills inside of the streams and the platform team, and also architecture. So if the cities team needs some architecture advice, have architecture as a separate enabling team. Again, if this was ideal, we'd have architects inside of our streams. Oh, quick note as well, if you ever do these diagrams, don't forget to put the flow of change arrow on. It's an important one to have on there, because the indication is value flows from left to right. Okay, you don't just draw a diagram, we're visualizing flow. So we now have our 10 people who are split across our current teams, and all the ones that aren't the nice avatars are the people we potentially need to hire. Potentially we need product managers for commerce and cities. We need additional devs for cities and commerce. We might need additional designers or mobile developers, and we need to bottom out the platform team. So we've got a route forward to potentially where we need to hire. But the context switching reality of where they are right now is these domains exist, and our team currently has to context switch between each of those areas. And they're just putting on the different hat. So today I'm going to be working on cities and commerce. Today I'm going to be working on, working on cities, and then I'm going to be working on commerce and then platform. So when we talk about cognitive load, we want to be reducing that. And, if we're context switching, then that's cognitive load, because I have to ramp up have to understand the different domain areas. So it gives us a way to start thinking about where to hire in order to reduce cognitive load. And that's where they got to, was we need to do some hiring. And luckily they got some funding, so they went ahead and did that. So, lessons learned. So as time has gone by now, they've done some hiring. They've got some experience with it. They've thought about whether the streams and things are going to work. And this is sort of the result of some of that, which I'll share with you. So one thing was interesting was we came up with these streams, awesome. But every now and again, we onboarded a new customer. And as Jana was saying earlier, we go back into agency mode because they need custom stuff. What? So suddenly, actually, the people that were in commerce and cities now need to put another hat on, and it's a temporary hat, but it's a temporary onboarding hat where they need to collaborate with. So 80% of the platform delivers most of what the customer needs, but there's always something, which I'm fairly sure they charge the right amount of money for, as Jana would say. But there's a period of time where we need to take the resources from these teams. So if that's happening, we need to make sure that we're not asking our cities and commerce teams to be delivering features while we're onboarding customers, because they're context switching, and it's just going to slow us all down. So there's room there for kind of forming an onboarding team where we can capture the processes involved in that, but it's temporary, and the team structure is long-lived, but the people within the team can kind of shift in and out potentially. So we can capture the processes of onboarding so that when people move between the teams, they go, I've got my onboarding hat on, right, where are the processes? And have we documented everything we need in order to reduce the cognitive load of the people joining that team to say, right, how do we do this again? How do we actually do an employment? How do we engage with the customer? So that was an interesting one. Context switching is a killer, completely and utterly, specifically around mobile and web. Mobile specifically is a challenging one because of the delivery cadence and the general skill set. And that's where they've struggled mostly, is to how to get the people from being independent mobile and web teams where we keep handing over between them. So, but the problem is essentially the mobile and web teams are context switching between these three different things. So if the mobile developers don't have anything to do on cities, I'll pick up some platform work. Oh, the platform work's taking 6 weeks. Cities have now got a feature that requires mobile work. Well, we can't pick that up yet. Why not? Because we're doing platform work for 6 weeks. What? And it's this dichotomy of, well, if we had permanent resource in the cities team, they would pick it up straight away. But they might not be working 100% of the time. But do we really want 100% utilization of those people to deliver that value? And that's the trade-off. Do we want to spend the money to enable faster flow? And is that the trade-off? And at the moment, anyone worked with government and local councils and all those kind of things, right? So it's fairly slow, right? Things take a bit longer. And so that's what they've kind of struggled with. They were banking on a growth strategy, and grants, all those kind of things didn't come in. So they've not been able to hire to achieve the cross-functional vision. So essentially the reality of where they're at right now is we have these commerce and city streams, but a piece of work will start and then there'll be a blocking dependency. So they'll hand over to It's either blocked on mobile, it's blocked on web, it's blocked on platform, whatever it is. But essentially, each of those teams currently have an independent backlog. And we're handing over. What does handover do? It kills flow, right? So what the product people are then having to do is coordinate across teams. What are you working? Why am I needing to know that the mobile team is doing platform work so that I can coordinate features to go all the way through my stream? But of course, what happens is they get to here, they put the hand over the work, start some new work. Ooh, we've got more work in progress. Oops. Okay. And again, it's the reality of where they are, the size they are. They haven't got the resources necessarily to satisfy that. But what they have is an understanding that that blocker exists. So when the product team say, why is it taking so long? Here, this is why it's taking long. So let me walk you through it. Platform as a product is another big topic which we're not going to go into here, but thinking about what a platform is there for. And its goal is to reduce the cognitive load of stream-aligned teams. And if you've got teams that are currently kind of operations teams that maybe just build platforms and don't have the product-based mentality about users. So if we think about user needs mapping, well, why isn't the platform team doing user needs mapping of who are our users? Well, it's the developers, it's the streamlined teams. Have we understood what their needs are? What do they need us to do to help them deliver value quicker? And so it's the introduction of those product management techniques that may be missing. But again, when you've only got one person in the platform team, that's pretty tricky. So it's a long-term strategy, long-term goal, and something that at least they understand where they want to go with it. My purpose here is to help the other teams, and it's something to move forward. Some of the big wins, obviously, introduction of commerce, introduction of cities as streams, really gave the business much clearer focus of where they were going, how they could hire, better alignment of customer services. So the actual customer services team said, oh yeah, we can organize ourselves and say, I'll deal with cities issues and I'll deal with commerce issues. Great. That means I've got reduced cognitive load because I now no longer need to worry about my the other part of the system. And they're able to kind of market and serve their customers differently and organized. So definitely big wins there. The technical side is a challenge, but it always is. User needs, they really like the process, and they've already identified other value streams through the use of which users they're serving. So they're continuing to look at that, and really kind of, if you think about having a clear vision of how you want to grow your business, if you can go to an investor and say, give me some money, how are you going to spend it? I'll show you how I'm going to spend it. These are our streams. These are our value streams. This is how the expected revenue from each of those streams, and enable us to deliver on that value. We need to hire this person, this person, this person, this person, because that will reduce the cognitive load and enable us to achieve fast flow. Cool. Have some money. Sounds like you know what you're talking about. So finish on a final quote from Tom, which is basically Team Topologies has given us a lens through which we can visualize and openly discuss how to evolve our organization. Is it a silver bullet? 100% not. Is it another framework? Not sure it's a framework. Not sure it's a methodology. It's just Team Topologies. Can it be used in big organizations? Yes. Can it be used on small ones? Yes. Are there context switching problems? Of course. But that's the reality of where we are. So if you'd like to learn any more about Team Topologies, there's some awesome infographics, which I may well have designed. Take a look at those. They're useful in PDF format just to share and kind of get the basic idea, basic flow of how we might approach things. Few URLs, user needs mapping. There's also other techniques like independent service heuristics, and there's lots of useful resources on the GitHub page as well for team dependency tracking or cognitive load assessment. Lots there. So with that, I'd say thank you very much for your time.